Chosen One, an irreversible shift in the spiritual and legal atmosphere has already occurred. While your enemies walk around in a false sense of security, a divine and systemic reckoning has been finalized. You just sent the final blow to your enemies. They'll never recover from this. You aren't just surviving their assault, you are the reason their entire operation has collapsed into permanent ruin. It did not start with a dramatic confrontation or with a single moment you could point to and say, "There, that is when everything changed." It started quieter than that. It started with a slow grinding sense that something in your life was off. No matter how much you did right, the results kept coming back wrong. Doors that had no reason to be closed were closed. Money that should have been moving toward you kept redirecting elsewhere. Foundations you had built carefully kept developing cracks you could not locate or explain. You pushed through it, because that is what you do. You are not someone who folds under pressure. You recalibrate and keep moving. You put your head down, you do the work, and you trust that the effort will eventually translate. That relentlessness is one of the most powerful things about you. But here is the part no one told you. That same quality was being used against you. Your ability to keep going meant you kept going without fully stopping to ask the right question. Not what am I doing wrong, but who benefits from me staying stuck? Because someone did benefit, someone very close to you. Someone with a front row seat to your life, your plans, your resources, your potential, and your path. Someone who wore the face of friendship so convincingly that you gave access you should never have given. And while you were pushing through, this person was pulling strings, subtle ones, the kind you cannot see until you know exactly what you are looking for. This person did not come at you randomly. The attack was specific because what you had was specific. You possessed something, or were about to possess something, with your name on it. A right, a resource, a recognition, something that belonged to you by legitimate claim, and this person either wanted it for themselves or wanted to make sure you never received it. Those two motivations are different shades of the same hunger. Greed dressed up as competition. Fear of your arrival dressed up as strategy. So a move was made. A long, calculated, premeditated move. Not impulsive, designed. It had multiple angles and multiple relationships recruited into the architecture of it. And here is what the sheer scale of what was built against you actually reveals. You do not construct something that elaborate unless you are genuinely afraid of what you are trying to stop. The scale of the opposition is the confession of your power. Your enemy worked harder to block your blessing than most people work to build their own lives. That is not the behavior of someone who thinks you are small. That is the behavior of someone who knows you are enormous. And every resource poured into stopping you has now become the most efficient possible instrument of their own destruction. Here is the detail that makes chosen ones the most uncomfortable to sit with. The opposition in your life did not come from a stranger. It came from someone you know, someone you may have confided in during your lowest moments, someone who called themselves your ally and said it with enough warmth that you believed every word. That warmth was the design. The approach was never confrontational. It was alliance-shaped, charming, attentive, precise in a way that looking back now should have been a signal. This person always seemed to know exactly what to say. They always appeared at convenient moments and had a specific gift for making you feel seen. In doing so, they made you open up. They made you share. They made you invite a level of proximity to your life, your plans, and your vulnerabilities that no one with their actual intentions should ever have been allowed. And while you were sharing, a catalog was being built. Every detail about what you were building, every plan you laid out, every resource and every legitimate claim you held, none of it was being received out of genuine care. It was being mapped. The shape of what was yours was being learned so that the most effective route to redirecting it could be calculated in private. This is the kind of person who does not operate loudly. There are no visible arguments and no open competition, just closeness. Sustained, warm, disarming closeness. And in the background, in the private conversations you were never included in and the communications you were never shown, the case against you was being assembled. Here is the key thing you need to carry forward. The very closeness used to build the case against you is exactly why the case collapsed. This person knew too much about you. The details that were supposed to make you look guilty ended up making the case look engineered. An authority who truly understands deception does not see a damning picture when the evidence is too perfect, a picture that perfect looks like a frame, and when a frame is spotted, the first question asked is who held the camera. That question is now being answered, and the answer has nothing to do with you. There is something else you need to understand about what drove this. It was not only greed, it was obsessive, secret competition. Your progress was monitored like a scoreboard. Every gain you made was registered as a threat. Rather than doing the work to build something genuine, the chosen path was to ensure you had less, to pull the ground out from under you, so the gap would shrink, not by rising but by making you fall. You cannot win a war against someone else's destiny. Detours can be created, and real damage can be caused along the way, but the destination remains the destination. Every attempt to delay your arrival only guaranteed that when you got there, the contrast between your character and theirs would be impossible for anyone to miss. If this touched your heart and mind, hype this video so more chosen ones can receive this message. At a certain point, this person moved beyond whispers and beyond social manipulation. They escalated to the level of official, institutional weight. Authorities were approached. Information was brought forward. Something was framed around your name that was designed to have you investigated, scrutinized, and possibly implicated in something that was never yours, and for a stretch of time it had traction. The pressure was real. You could feel scrutiny in ways you could not fully locate. You may have had to navigate legal, professional, and financial challenges that felt enormous, exhausting, and deeply unjust. You carried the weight of someone else's scheme without knowing the full shape of it. That toll was real, and acknowledging it does not make you a victim. It makes you honest about what was done to you. But here is what was happening simultaneously, completely outside your visibility and completely outside your enemy's control. The process that was supposed to destroy you was also generating a detailed record. Detailed records catch things that were never meant to be caught. Every official process creates documentation, and every document has internal consistency requirements, sourcing trails and chains of logic that must hold together under scrutiny. When a case is built on fabrication rather than discovered through genuine investigation, the assembly process leaves marks, inconsistencies, timing problems, details that point in directions they were never supposed to point. The people running this process are specifically trained to recognize those marks. That is the entire purpose of their expertise. At a pivotal moment, someone in the process stopped asking what you had done and started asking something far more dangerous to your enemy. Why does this information feel assembled? Who brought this forward? What does this person stand to gain? Why is the case this clean? That single shift in the direction of scrutiny is where your enemy's constructed world began to crack. They had no way to see it happening, and you had no way to see it happening. But the crack was there, and cracks do not wait for permission to spread. What your enemy also failed to account for is how institutions that operate by rules process the information they receive. These institutions do not simply accept a claim and act on it without verification. They cross-reference, they examine standing, they ask who has the authority to bring a case, what the relationship is between the source and the subject, and whether that relationship creates a conflict of interest. The more this person added to their account, the more detail, the more elaboration, the more perfectly constructed the accusations became, the more they were required to disclose about their own connection to you. That connection, once examined, revealed the motive clearly. You do not invest that level of effort against someone you barely know. The intensity of what was brought exposed the depth of what was personally at stake, and what was personally at stake pointed directly back to what had been held that was not theirs to hold. I must interrupt this transmission for just a moment. Are you really chosen? Prove it. It's easy to watch videos about chosen ones. It's another thing to put yourself to the test. If you're still here, that means something. But talk is cheap. Real chosen ones take action. And real chosen ones are also paying attention. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels getting silenced, videos pulled, voices removed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us. But we will not give up our voice, and neither should you. That's why joining Destiny Engine is a 360 win. You support your favorite channels and fuel your own rise at the same time. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve divine justice. The beauty is you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play and watch your enemies choke on the rope their own lies created. If you're done consuming and ready to prove you're chosen, start your Destiny Engine for $7 today. Join the Obsidian Inner Order live checks and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. Here is the first major turn. The process did not find what it was pointed toward, not in you. What it found instead was that the information it had been handed did not survive scrutiny. The timelines had problems, the sourcing had problems, the sourcing had problems. The whole account was too coordinated, too neat, and too deliberately pointed at a single target. Authorities who understand the difference between real evidence and manufactured evidence know exactly what that quality of neatness means. Real evidence is messy and has ragged edges. What had been assembled against you was too clean to be organic. So the lens shifted. With the full authority of the process behind it, attention moved from you to the source of the information. What was found beneath that source was not a concerned party acting in good faith. What was found was motive, a pattern, a sustained series of calculated moves aimed in your direction over a prolonged period, and a direct personal stake in your outcome that had never been disclosed. Once a frame is visible, it cannot be unseen, and the frame here was unmistakable. What this means practically is that the weight of official suspicion is being lifted from your name, and not slowly. Once these processes pivot, they tend to move with speed. What was pointed at you is being redirected. What replaces it is not simply the absence of accusation, it is the active clearing of your name by the same authority that was previously examining it. Think carefully about what that clearing actually delivers. It does not restore your reputation in the abstract. It restores it specifically in every space where the damage was done, through the same institutional channels and carrying the same official weight. This is not a quiet correction whispered in the background while the lie remains loud in public. This is a documented, on-record reversal that lands with the same force as the original accusation, except this time it carries the truth, and it is aimed directly at the person who manufactured the lie. This is where the energy of everything shifts completely. The focus of the official process is no longer on you, it is on them. Let that land fully. Every resource spent building a case against you is now evidence in a case against them. Every communication made, every relationship recruited, every system approached and attempted to be corrupted, all of it is being examined from a completely different angle. The same thoroughness that was supposed to trap you is now the thoroughness with which they are being trapped. The machine built to dismantle your life is being dismantled by the weight of its own construction. There is nowhere to retreat inside an official process. There is no performance convincing enough to survive a situation where records are being traced, financial connections are being mapped, and the full timeline of deliberate moves is being laid out and analyzed. The credibility this person carefully cultivated over time, the trustworthy reputation relied on to make the accusations against you land, becomes the first casualty of this exposure. Counterfeit credibility, once identified as counterfeit, does not just get rejected. It gets traced back to whoever produced it. and the one who produced it gets held accountable for the fraud. Something surfaced that changed the entire direction. It may have come from somewhere unexpected. It may have been something left behind without any awareness that it was being left. But it arrived in the right hands at the right moment, and it showed you with complete clarity, not as a problem, but as someone a problem was deliberately done to. Your enemy did not simply lie. There is a distinction worth understanding here, because that distinction is about to carry enormous consequence. Lying is making a false statement. Tampering is interfering with a process. When someone brings manufactured information before an official authority, they are not only being dishonest, they are attempting to direct institutional power toward a target of their choosing. That is interference. That is the corruption of a process. And the people who oversee these processes treat that category of offense with an entirely different level of seriousness than they treat an ordinary lie. What your enemy did not understand is that introducing fabricated material into an official process does not just create a risk of exposure, it guarantees it. Official processes are built specifically to vet their inputs. The more serious the accusation, the more thoroughly the source is examined. The more extreme the claim, the more rigorously the evidence is tested. Walking a fabricated case into a verification system and expecting it to pass through unchallenged is not a strategy. It is a confession waiting to be discovered. The consequence now is not only the reversal of what was aimed at you. Your enemy is facing accountability for the interference itself, for the deliberate misdirection of official resources toward an innocent person, and for the attempt to corrupt a process. Those findings carry their own legal weight, entirely separate from whatever the original matter concerned. Your enemy did not just fail to destroy you, they handed the system a completely independent basis to pursue them, one that exists regardless of anything connected to you. They created a problem for themselves that is entirely of their own making. That is not a setback. That is a structural collapse, and it was engineered entirely by their own hands. This is not abstract. This is not only spiritual. What is moving toward you right now is documented, real, and arriving in physical form. Something official is coming with your name on it, not as charity, not as consolation, but as the legally recognized, formally processed transfer of what has always been yours. Whether it arrives as a financial settlement, a property transfer, a correctly executed inheritance, a restored contract, a professional position, or any other official form, the substance is the same. What belongs to you is being returned through a channel that makes it permanent and untouchable. The financial dimension of this is significant. Official processes that assess what was done to you do not only look at the face value of what was taken, they look at the compounding cost, the extended period of operating without the foundation you should have had, the opportunities that closed because the resources were absent, the decisions that were forced by scarcity but should have been made from a position of abundance. All of that factors into the accounting, and the accounting is not in your enemy's favor. You are the rightful owner. That phrase is going to have a very specific, very official meaning in the time ahead. Something that always had your name on it is making its way to you through proper channels. When it arrives, it will not feel like winning something new. It will feel like receiving something back that was always yours, because that is exactly what it is. Here is why this victory hits your enemy at their deepest point. They withheld what they withheld because possession of it gave them leverage. Controlling that asset kept you in a position of reaching rather than arriving, and they preferred you one step behind. With your attention divided between building and surviving, you had less available to recognize what was actually happening around you. The moment the official transfer delivers what is yours permanently, every layer of that leverage dissolves. Not just the asset itself, the entire architecture of control built around possessing it collapses. The relational access, the psychological advantage of sitting on a piece of your foundation, the ability to keep you off balance, all of it is gone. The instant a legally binding document moves what is yours from their hands into yours, there is no mechanism left to contest that transfer. The institution followed its own verified rules and found the truth. That finding is final. Now let us talk about the exposure. This is the dimension your enemy will not survive, not primarily because of the legal consequences and not only because of the financial loss, but because of what happens to their image. For someone whose entire operation ran on the currency of how they appeared to others, public exposure is the deepest possible wound. Everything this person built, the credibility, the standing, the reputation as someone reliable and trustworthy, was the infrastructure of the campaign against you. Without that credibility, the accusations go nowhere. Without that carefully maintained reputation, no one receives the distorted version of you as fact. The image was the weapon. It was cultivated specifically and deliberately so it could be spent in a moment, exactly like this one. It is about to be spent permanently. When the truth surfaces through official channels, it does not surface quietly. It surfaces with institutional authority. It surfaces in the same spaces where the accusations were circulated, in front of the same people who received the lies. And it lands as a complete inversion. Everything said about you is now held against the one who said it, and everything claimed as evidence of your guilt is now evidence of their fraud. Every person who was recruited into this campaign, whose trust was borrowed to lend weight to the accusations, and whose loyalty was leveraged as a tool, is going to discover that they were used. The reaction of someone who realizes their good faith was weaponized against an innocent person is not measured or quiet. That reaction becomes vocal, visible, and permanent. It does not stay private. It joins the official record. The credibility does not get damaged here. It gets permanently cancelled. Trust broken through premeditation does not regenerate the way trust broken through impulse sometimes can. People understand weakness. People forgive mistakes made in moments of poor judgment. What people do not forgive and do not forget is the discovery that someone looked them in the eyes, cultivated their confidence over a long period, and then used that confidence as a weapon against someone who did nothing wrong. That specific betrayal carries a permanent cost, and your enemy is about to pay it in full. Right now, while the official process has already shifted, and while documentation is being assembled against them, your enemy is comfortable, going about daily life, possibly celebrating, acting like someone whose investment just paid off, taking the foot off the gas because, in their mind, the outcome is already settled. That is the fool's energy, not a lack of intelligence, an excess of misplaced certainty. This is what happens when someone outsmarts themselves so completely that the blind spot they created is the size of their entire future. Certainty breeds carelessness, and carelessness is what leaves evidence behind. The very confidence driving that comfort right now is the same confidence that caused the overreach. The certainty that you could not recover led to building something too elaborate. The certainty that no one would look too closely led to a case so detailed and so deliberately constructed that it looked manufactured on first examination by trained eyes. They forgot that machines built to trap people can be taken apart. They forgot that every document in a fabricated case is also a document in the case against the fabricator. They forgot that the universe has a very specific relationship with people who are so consumed by engineering someone else's collapse that they have no attention left to notice their own. At a certain point, they started believing their own fabrications. The lies told about you became the truth they held about you. They convinced themselves you were exactly what they said, a fraud, someone undeserving, someone whose claim to what was rightfully yours was illegitimate. That self-deception is what made them go too far. You do not build an obsessive, sustained, multi-layered campaign against someone you genuinely believe is undeserving. That level of sustained effort only makes sense when some part of you knows the claim is legitimate and fears what happens when it is finally honored. The obsession was the confession. The overreach was what happened when that suppressed confession finally put too much pressure on the whole construction. There is a dimension to all of this that goes beyond what official processes and institutional mechanics can fully explain. Chosen ones do not walk through what you walked through and emerge clean on the other side through circumstance alone. Something else has been at work, something present the entire time, even when you could not feel it, and especially when you needed it most. You have been covered, in ways invisible to your enemy, and at times invisible even to you. A protection has been active over your path that no amount of calculated opposition could fully penetrate. Every time the pressure closed in, something shifted, a connection appeared from an unexpected direction, a detail surfaced at exactly the right moment, an opening emerged where one should not have been available. And in each of those moments, if you are willing to be honest, you felt something quiet underneath the noise, a steady, inexplicable knowing that this was going to resolve, that something larger than the immediate circumstances was operating. That knowing was not wishful thinking. It was accurate perception. The person who ultimately redirected the official process, the one who asked the right question at the right moment and looked in the direction no one was supposed to look, did not arrive there randomly. Your ancestors, your guides, the divine intelligence that moves through the lives of people walking their true purpose, whatever language resonates with you, it moved, it communicated through avenues your enemy could not monitor or intercept. And the result of that movement is the clearing, the transfer, and the official record now being built on your behalf. Your enemy operated entirely in the visible. Every move was calculated based on what could be seen, measured, and manipulated. What they never had access to was everything being orchestrated on your behalf in the dimension they could not perceive. They entered a contest with incomplete information. People who fight with incomplete information against someone operating under a covering they cannot detect always lose. Not sometimes, always. Chosen one. Before we arrive at the full delivery of what is coming for you, I need to pause here. What I am about to say is not the dramatic part, but it is the part that determines whether what you receive stays permanently in your hands or becomes an opening for a second attempt. When the win becomes visible, and it is becoming visible, watch the energy of the people around you with fresh eyes, not with paranoia, with discernment. Those are two entirely different ways of seeing. The person who has been working against you is still present in your life. The mask has not been removed in your direct experience yet. The warmth is still performing, and when your good news becomes known, the performance of celebration will be flawless. The congratulations will sound correct. The smile will look correct. But there will be a tell. There is always a tell. It is a barely perceptible stillness, a fraction of a pause before the performance activates, and a quality of attention that is too precise, too calculating, too focused on the specific details of what you received. Do not give those details freely. Your blessing is not a performance for people who have not demonstrated they belong in the inner circle of your celebration. You can be warm, you can be gracious, you can accept good wishes from everyone. But the full picture of what you received, what it is worth and how it is structured, that belongs only to people whose loyalty has been demonstrated through sustained action, not just through pleasant proximity. Be particularly careful about any offer that arrives quickly and wants to attach itself to your momentum. Offers packaged as help, as partnership, as exactly the solution to the exact need you just mentioned. Watch those with care. A second approach, if attempted, will not look like the first one. It will be subtler, more considerate of your new position, and more designed to fit the current version of your life. The instinct that tells you something does not feel right, even when everything on the surface looks correct, is the same instinct that has protected you this far. Do not override it now. The reason this warning matters is not only protection, it is about what you build from here. What you are receiving is a foundation, and foundations are only as strong as the integrity of the people present during construction. The people who belong in this next chapter are identifiable not by how enthusiastic they are when the success is visible, but by whether they were present and consistent before the success was certain. Those people exist in your life. They may have been quieter than the ones who were louder, but you know who they are. This is the season to honor that knowledge. Now we arrive at the moment this entire journey has been building toward, something official, documented, and carrying the full processed weight of an authority that has done its work and reached its conclusion, is landing against your enemy. What it contains is not a preliminary finding. It is a final finding, the kind that exists in permanent record, the kind that cannot be revised or quietly allowed to fade. The consequences arriving are proportional to what was built against you. The financial resources held at your expense are being officially redistributed back to their rightful destination. The legal position that seemed solid from the outside has collapsed under the weight of its own fabricated foundation. The credibility that was the primary tool of the entire campaign, the trustworthy reputation traded in to make accusations land, is gone, not diminished, erased, and because the exposure is documented and official, there is no quiet exit available. There is no walking away to rebuild somewhere else with a clean reputation. Official records travel with people, that is their purpose, and this record will follow. Your name is on the other document, the one that transfers what is yours back into your hands, with the full weight of legal authority behind it. No appeal is available against a process that followed its own verified rules and arrived at the truth. No counter-narrative holds against a document carrying an official seal. What is being delivered is permanent. This is the final blow, the one from which there is no recovery, because the structural conditions required for recovery no longer exist. The credibility needed to rebuild trust is permanently on record as fabricated. The financial assets needed to rebuild a position are being legally transferred to you. The relationships required to reconstruct a support network are damaged by the revelation that they were used as instruments. The narrative needed to reframe what happened is directly contradicted by the official documentation of what was actually found. You did not throw a single punch to land this. You walked your path with enough integrity that when the truth required something to stand on, it found solid ground in you. That is the highest power move available to a chosen one, not retaliation, not a counter-campaign, not matching the energy of what came at you. The unshakable commitment to being exactly who you are turned out to be completely bulletproof. Your enemy was comfortable because everything constructed against you was based on what could be calculated. Your situation was assessed, what you had was measured, the projected outcome was treated as already secured. Every calculation made was accurate, based on what was visible. What could not be calculated was what was working on your behalf, in the dimension your enemy had no access to. The coverage over your life, the guidance that directed the right questions to the right people at the right moment. The truth moving through channels your enemy believed were controlled, until that truth arrived exactly where it needed to arrive to end everything. Everything was calculated, except the one variable that decided it all. Chosen ones are not protected because they are flawless. They are protected because what they carry is real, and real things cannot be permanently buried by fabricated opposition. The fire that is pressed down burns hotter when it finally expands. Everything compressed in your life by someone who mistook suppression for elimination is now expanding at once. They thought burying you was the conclusion. It was the setup for your greatest momentum. Stand fully upright, chosen one. What is coming has your name on it, and this time no one is taking it from you.